aliens puzzled by humans calling engineers wizards until they saw the magic in action. The alien delegation stood silently in the massive observation dome of the Styrian station, orbiting the gas giant Eridani 7. The gleaming human-built facility buzzed with activity as ships docked and launched, each maneuver seamless despite the chaotic choreography of interstellar trade. The station itself pulsed with life, its engineering marvels far beyond anything the visiting Halecs and aquatic species with a deep affinity for logic had anticipated. Chief Negotiator Karel of the Halek delegation adjusted the translucent breathing sphere around their head, their pale blue tendrils twitching in unease. The humans were a peculiar species, and Karel had spent the past weeks attempting to decipher their quirks. Their obsession with coffee? Understandable. Their reliance on humor in tense situations? Tolerable. But the humans' reverence for their engineers, whom they inexplicably referred to as wizards, defied all sense. Karel turned to Captain Mariana Voss, the human commander assigned as their diplomatic liaison. Your species' habit of imprecise terminology continues to puzzle us, Karel said, their voice reverberating through the translator like a slow ripple in water. Why do you insist on calling engineers wizards? The term is illogical and misleading. Captain Voss smirked, leaning against the observation railing. Her sharp green eyes glinted with something Karel had come to recognize as mischief. It's not misleading if you've seen what they can do, she replied. You'll understand soon enough. Karel's tendrils coiled tighter, a sign of skepticism. We do not rely on metaphors to describe the work of our hygrotechnicians. Their excellence is a matter of precision, not sorcery. Voss chuckled. Let me guess, you're the type who needs a demonstration to believe, aren't you? Before Karel could respond, the station shuddered violently, the lights flickered, and a deafening alarm blared. Red emergency indicators flared to life, casting the observation dome in an ominous glow. Voss immediately straightened, her calm implant flaring to life as she barked commands. What's going on? Karel demanded, their tendrils lashing with agitation. Massive systems failure in the core reactor, Voss said grimly. Some kind of cascading energy surge. If it goes critical, this station and everyone on it is toast. Karel recoiled. Surely you have protocols in place for such emergencies. We do, Voss said, grinning despite the danger. This is where our wizards come in. The engineering bay of a Styrian station was a controlled storm of chaos. Humans in black and yellow utility suits darted between consoles, shouting updates and relaying data. In the center of the storm stood Chief Engineer Malik Reyes, a wiry man with a buzz cut and an intense gaze. His hands moved like a concert pianist's across the hollow interface, summoning streams of schematics and diagnostics. Karel observed from a safe distance, their translucent breathing sphere fogging slightly from the tension. They couldn't understand half of what Reyes was saying. Terms like flux dampeners, gravitic conduits, and quantum redundancy were being thrown around like incantations. All right, team, Reyes shouted. We've got 12 minutes before this reactor turns into a miniature sun. Jenkins, get the secondary coolant flow online. Hurry, isolate the cascade nodes, and someone tell the Halecs not to touch anything. Karel bristled. I assure you, we have no intention of interfering with your magic. Reyes glanced up, smirking as if he hadn't just heard the station was moments from obliteration. Good, just stand back and enjoy the show. As the reactor room became a blur of activity, Karel watched in astonishment. Reyes moved with uncanny precision, seemingly predicting problems before they occurred. When a coolant pipe ruptured, he redirected pressure before anyone else noticed. When an auxiliary power grid failed, he rerouted energy through a backup system humans had apparently cobbled together on a whim. The reactor's core, an immense sphere of swirling plasma, was visibly destabilizing, its glow intensifying dangerously. The station's AI issued a monotone countdown, critical failure in 5 minutes. Karel couldn't help but ask, do you truly believe you can repair this in time? Reyes didn't even look up. Repair? Nah, I'm gonna fix it. Karel was about to demand clarification when Reyes barked. Hurry, boost gravitic compression by 20% on my mark. Jenkins, vent plasma to corridor 9. Yeah, I know it'll melt the deck. We'll deal with that later. Seconds ticked by. The reactor screeched like a wounded beast, and Karel was certain the station's destruction was imminent. But Reyes, undeterred, plunged his gloved hands into a hollow panel. Sparks flew, the reactor's glow flickered and then dimmed. The AI's voice abruptly changed, reactor stability restored, emergency protocols lifted. The room erupted in cheers. Reyes stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow as if he'd just finished a light workout. "See," he said, grinning at Karel. "Magic." Karel stared at him, utterly dumbfounded. They replayed the events in their mind, trying and failing to find a logical explanation for what they just witnessed. The humans didn't seem fazed by their narrow escape, as if this sort of miracle was routine. I must re-evaluate my assessment of your engineers," Karel said slowly. "Perhaps wizard is not such an inappropriate term after all." Reyes laughed, clapping them on the shoulder. "Welcome to the club, Squid. Now, how do you feel about coffee?" The price of magic. Hours after the near catastrophe, Asterian Station had settled into an uneasy calm. Emergency crews worked to repair scorched corridors and fried circuitry, while the station's inhabitants exchanged nervous whispers about how close they'd come to annihilation. Karel stood in the engineering bay, still processing the events. The humans around them laughed, joked, and congratulated themselves with a nonchalance that bordered on reckless. Reyes, the so-called wizard, leaned against a console, sipping a steaming cup of the humans' revered coffee. Despite the exhaustion etched into his face, he seemed entirely at ease. Karel finally broke the silence. "How can you treat this so casually? Your station was seconds from destruction." Reyes raised an eyebrow, as if Karel had asked why water was wet. "Because we fixed it," he said simply. "No point in dwelling on the could-have-beens." "But you didn't just fix it," Karel insisted. "What I witnessed was impossible. The way you manipulated those systems, how could you predict so many variables in so little time?" Reyes chuckled, setting down his cup. "It's not magic, Squid. It's experience, intuition, and a bit of healthy insanity." Captain Voss entered the room, her uniform crisp despite the chaos of the day, "and a hell of a lot of caffeine," she added with a smirk. Karel turned to Voss, their tendrils twitching in frustration. "Your engineers possess skills that defy logic. No HFY hydrotechnician could have handled such a situation without extensive calculations and deliberation. How is it that your people excel under pressure while appearing so disorganized?" Voss leaned against a bulkhead, her expression softening. "It's not disorganization, it's adaptability. Humans don't just solve problems, we improvise, especially when the stakes are high." "That improvisation nearly cost you your station," Karel countered. Reyes shrugged. "Yeah, but it didn't. That's the thing about humans. We don't aim for perfect solutions, we aim for solutions that work." Karel fell silent, considering this. It was a philosophy that seemed reckless, even arrogant. Yet the evidence spoke for itself. The station was intact, and the humans had triumphed over chaos with an ease that was both inspiring and unsettling. Later, Karel requested access to the station's repair logs to analyze Reyes' methods. The data was baffling. Reyes and his team had executed over 24 system overrides, rerouted power through damaged conduits, and even used a heat shield intended for ship exteriors to stabilize the reactor's core. Every solution was unconventional, risky, and, by HFY standards, outright insane. Yet it had worked. The alien delegation convened in their quarters to discuss their findings. Karel addressed the group, their tone measured. "The humans are unlike any species we have encountered. Their methods are chaotic, yet effective. They embody a form of logic that defies our understanding." One of the junior Halleks, not all, interjected. "Perhaps their term wizard is not so metaphorical. They possess a mastery over technology that borders on the supernatural." Karel's tendrils coiled in thought. "No, it is not supernatural. It is something deeper. They wield their intuition like a tool, a weapon. Even, their engineers are not merely technicians. They are creators, innovators, capable of bending reality to their will." Meanwhile, Reyes and his team were already tackling another crisis, a failed oxygen pump in one of the station's agricultural modules. For them, it was just another day. As Reyes crouched beside a malfunctioning valve, his comm pinged with an incoming message. "Reyes here," he said, wrench in hand. "It's Karel," came the alien's slow, deliberate voice, "We have reviewed your methods during the reactor incident." Reyes grinned, not looking up from his work. "Let me guess, you're still not convinced we're wizards?" "To the contrary," Carol replied. "We are beginning to understand why your people use such terminology. Your ability to adapt, to create solutions in the face of overwhelming odds, it is impressive." Reyes paused, genuinely surprised. "Well, that's high praise coming from you, Squid. What's the catch?" "No catch," Carol said, though there was a subtle hesitation in their tone. "Only a question. What is the cost of such improvisation?" Reyes' grin faded. He set down his wrench, leaning back on his heels. "The cost? Sometimes it's high. Sometimes it's your sanity, your sleep, your peace of mind. And yeah, sometimes it's your life." Carol was silent for a moment. "And yet you persist." Reyes glanced at his team, who were laughing and joking despite the grueling work. "Because if we don't, no one else will." The next day, Captain Voss invited the Halek delegation to witness a human tradition, the after-action toast. In the station's mess hall, the engineering crew gathered, raising their mugs of coffee or, in Reyes' case, a bottle of something far stronger. "To surviving another day," Reyes declared, his voice carrying over the crowd. Carol stood at the edge of the gathering, observing the humans with a mixture of fascination and respect. They were a strange species, reckless and unpredictable, yet endlessly resourceful. For the first time, Carol felt a flicker of understanding, perhaps even admiration. As the crew toasted and laughed, Carol approached Reyes. "Chief Engineer Reyes," they said, their voice uncharacteristically formal, "I would like to learn more about your methods." Reyes grinned, raising his glass. "Sure thing, Squid. Welcome to the world of wizardry. Hope you're ready to get your hands dirty." Carol hesitated, then extended a tendril. "I believe I am." And for the first time, they felt the spark of what the humans called magic. The weight of wizardry. Days passed aboard Styrian Station, and the Halek delegation found themselves increasingly drawn into the humans' world of relentless problem-solving and boundless ingenuity. Carl, in particular, spent long hours shadowing Reyes and his engineering team. Though the Halek leaders' initial skepticism lingered, it was gradually eroded by an undeniable truth: these humans were not just solving problems, they were rewriting the rules. Carol stood beside Reyes in the lower maintenance decks, where the station's automated drone repair system was malfunctioning. Sparks rained down from exposed conduits as Reyes knelt in the cramped space, splicing wires with an almost reckless disregard for safety. "Your methods," Carol began, their voice hesitant, "are unconventional, but there is a certain elegance to them." Reyes didn't look up. "You mean messy." "Effective," Carol corrected, "but it raises a question. What drives you to take such risks? Surely you could adhere to more traditional protocols." Reyes chuckled, his voice echoing in the confined space. "Traditional doesn't cut it out here, Squid. Space is unpredictable, and so are the problems it throws at us. If we stuck to the manual, we'd all be frozen corpses by now." Carel considered this as Reyes finished his work. The repaired drones buzzed to life, their diagnostic lights flickering green. Reyes stood, brushing soot from his hands. "See? No magic, just hard work." Carol's tendrils twitched in mild amusement. "Your species seems to blur the line between the two." Reyes grinned. "Stick around long enough, and you might start doing the same." The station's relative calm was shattered a week later. A rogue asteroid fragment, undetected by the station's sensors, struck a critical junction in the main power grid. The resulting explosion sent shockwaves through Styrian Station, plunging entire sectors into darkness. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow as alarms blared throughout the corridors. Carel joined Voss and Reyes in the central command center, where the holographic display showed the extent of the damage. Several key systems were offline, including life support in 3 inhabited sectors. "We've got about 4 hours before oxygen runs out in Sector 12, Voss said, her tone grim. "Reyes, what's your plan?" The engineer studied the schematics, his expression dark. "The main conduit's shot, and the backups are fried. We'll have to reroute power manually through the auxiliary grid." "That grid hasn't been tested in years," one of the junior engineers protested. "It's a maze down there." Reyes shot them a sharp look. Then we'll unmaze it. Get your tools and meet me in the crawlspace. Karel stepped forward, their tendrils coiling tightly. I will assist. Reyes hesitated, then nodded. Hope you're not claustrophobic. The auxiliary grid was a labyrinth of narrow tunnels, exposed cables, and decades-old equipment. Reyes led the team with Karel close behind, their breathing sphere glowing faintly in the dim light. This is madness, Karel muttered, squeezing through a particularly tight passage. Your systems are woefully inefficient. Why have they not been upgraded? Because no one funds upgrades for emergencies that might happen, Reyes replied, his tone laced with sarcasm. Out here, we make do with what we've got. Karel said nothing, but their respect for the humans grew. To them, the Halleck's pristine hydrotechnic systems were a point of pride, maintained meticulously and with ample resources. Yet these humans had built an empire in the stars with duct tape, ingenuity, and sheer stubbornness. The task was grueling. Reyes and his team worked tirelessly to reconnect severed lines, bypass overloaded circuits, and stabilize the fragile grid. Karel marveled at their resilience. Even as exhaustion set in, the humans cracked jokes and pushed forward with unwavering determination. At one point, a power surge nearly fried the auxiliary grid. Karel watched in awe as Reyes, with no time for deliberation, jammed a multi-tool into a failing relay, redirecting the current just enough to avoid disaster. The relay hissed and sparked, but the grid held. That, Reyes said, panting, is why we're called wizards. With less than 10 minutes to spare, the grid came online. Sector 12's life support systems hummed back to life, and the tension in the command center dissolved into cheers. Karel emerged from the tunnels, their usually composed demeanor visibly shaken. You gamble with your lives every time you face these challenges, they said to Reyes. How do you endure it? Reyes leaned against a wall, his face streaked with grime but his eyes alight with satisfaction. Because the alternative is worse. People are counting on us. Squid, if we don't step up, who will? Karel studied him, their tendrils curling thoughtfully. For all their logical precision, the Halleck's lacked this human drive, a willingness to risk everything for the greater good. It was a trait they could not fully comprehend, yet one they had come to admire deeply. That night, Karel convened with their delegation. The humans' methods are flawed, they admitted. Their technology is outdated, their protocols inefficient, yet they achieve what no other species would dare attempt. They succeed not because of their tools, but because of their determination. Natal, the junior delegate, leaned forward. What should we do with this knowledge? Karel's tendrils coiled tightly. We must learn from them. Their ingenuity, their resilience, it is a kind of magic, and it is one we would be wise to embrace. In the days that followed, Karel worked side by side with Reyes and his team, learning not just their techniques, but the mindset that drove them. For the first time, the Halleck's began to understand that magic was not in the tools or the methods, it was in the people wielding them. And as Karel walked the bustling corridors of Asterian Station, surrounded by the chatter and laughter of humans, they couldn't help but feel that they had witnessed something extraordinary. It wasn't just engineering. It was wizardry. The crisis that changed everything. The collaboration between the Halleck's and humans on Asterian Station was beginning to flourish. Karel had become a familiar sight in the engineering bay, often seen quietly observing the humans at work or hesitantly assisting with minor tasks. Reyes, ever the confident wizard, treated Karel like an apprentice, though he took care not to overwhelm the Halleck with the humans' chaotic pace. But the tenuous peace of the station was short-lived. It started with an anomaly. A long-range probe, returning from the station's outer perimeter, transmitted a garbled signal before abruptly going dark. At first, the humans dismissed it as a malfunction. Space was full of hazards, and probes were expendable. But then another probe went silent, and another. By the time the fourth probe vanished, the station was on high alert. In the command center, Captain Boss stood before a flickering holographic display, her jaw tight. Reyes and Karel stood beside her, along with key members of the Halleck delegation. The display showed a growing void near the edge of the system, an area where no signals could penetrate, as if space itself had been swallowed. What are we looking at? Reyes asked, his voice uncharacteristically serious. It's not natural, Voss said. That much we know. Whatever it is, it's moving closer. If it reaches us, we'll lose all communications and possibly more. Karel's tendrils twitched uneasily. Could it be a weapon? An attack from another species? We don't know, Voss admitted, but we can't take chances. Reyes, I need you to prep the station's defenses. And Karel, she hesitated. Your insight would be invaluable. We're dealing with the unknown here. Karel inclined their head. I will do what I can. The engineering bay became a hive of activity as Reyes and his team scrambled to fortify the station. Karel worked alongside them, their analytical mind providing a valuable counterbalance to the humans' improvisation. For the first time, the Halek leader began to feel like part of the team. As the hours dragged on, the anomaly drew closer. Its edges shimmered with a faint, otherworldly light, and the station's sensors struggled to make sense of its composition. It wasn't just a void, it was actively absorbing energy, drawing power from the surrounding space. In the control room, panic was mounting. This thing is draining our power grid, Reyes reported, slamming a hand on the console. If it gets any closer, it'll knock out life support. And then? Voss asked, though her expression said she already knew the answer. Reyes didn't mince words. Then we're screwed. Karel, meanwhile, was deep in thought. The anomaly defied every principle of physics they understood, but there was something familiar about its behavior. Its steady, methodical advance reminded them of the tides on their homeworld, drawn by an unseen force. I believe it is alive, Karel said suddenly, drawing the attention of the room. Reyes raised an eyebrow. You think it's a giant space jellyfish? Karel ignored the quip. Not a creature, but a presence, something sentient. It is not destroying, only consuming. Perhaps it is, unaware of us. Unaware? Voss repeated, incredulous. It's about to eat this station. Precisely why we must make it aware, Karel replied. If we can communicate, we may be able to stop it. Reyes crossed his arms. And how do you propose we do that? Write it a strongly worded letter? Karel hesitated, then turned to the holographic display. If it absorbs energy, perhaps we can use that to send a message, a carefully modulated signal, embedded in the energy flow. The room fell silent as the humans processed the idea. Finally, Reyes spoke. It's a crazy plan. Voss nodded, but it's the only one we've got. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Karel worked closely with Reyes to design a signal that could carry meaning across a medium they barely understood. The humans called it a Hail Mary, and Karel found the term strangely appropriate. As the anomaly loomed closer, Karel and Reyes stood side by side at the central console. The engineering team had rigged a power conduit to deliver the signal directly into the anomaly's path. It was a risky maneuver if the modulation was wrong. The station's systems could overload. Ready? Reyes asked. Karel nodded, though their tendrils quivered with anxiety. If this fails, it has been an honor working with you, Chief Engineer. Reyes grinned, his confidence unshaken. Don't start writing the eulogy yet, Squid. Let's see if this thing speaks fluent wizard. The signal was sent. For a moment, nothing happened. The anomaly continued its advance, its edges flickering like a living shadow. Then, slowly, it began to change. The shimmering light intensified, coalescing into patterns that almost resembled symbols. It's responding, Karel said, their voice barely above a whisper. Reyes leaned forward, eyes wide. What's it saying? Karel studied the patterns, their mind racing to decipher the alien logic. It's curious. It did not know we were here. Voss exhaled in relief. Can we convince it to stop? Karel adjusted the signal, embedding a plea for coexistence. The patterns shifted, their intensity fading. The anomaly seemed to hesitate, as if considering the request. Finally, it stopped. The room erupted in cheers. Karel sank into a chair, their tendrils drooping in exhaustion. Reyes clapped them on the back, his grin wide. You did it, Squid. You talked down a space monster. Karel allowed themselves a rare moment of satisfaction. No, they said quietly, we did it, together. In the days that followed, the anomaly retreated, leaving the station intact. The incident became a turning point, not just for a Styrian station, but for the relationship between humans and Holocs. Kal-El, once skeptical of the humans' chaotic methods, had come to see their value, and the humans, in turn, had learned to respect the Holocs' precision and insight. As Kal-El prepared to return to their homeworld, Reyes met them at the docking bay. "So," he said, leaning casually against the wall, "what's next for you, Squid?" Kal-El regarded him thoughtfully. "I will bring what I have learned to my people. Perhaps we, too, can learn to wield your wizardry." Reyes grinned. "Careful, once you start, it's hard to stop." Kal-El extended a tendril in the human gesture of camaraderie. "Farewell, Chief Engineer, may your magic always prevail." And with that, they departed, leaving Reyes and the rest of the humans to their endless adventures, confident that the spark of wizardry had ignited something far greater than they could have imagined. The anomaly's truth. Kal-El's departure marked a period of reflection aboard Styrian Station. While the immediate threat of the anomaly had passed, its enigmatic nature lingered in the minds of humans and Holocs alike. The question wasn't just what it was, but why it had come. For weeks, Reyes, Voss, and the engineering team worked with what little data they had, trying to piece together its origin. Then, without warning, the anomaly returned. The second encounter. This time, it did not approach slowly. The anomaly appeared on the station's long-range scanners as a sudden, blinding rupture in spacetime. Within seconds, all external communications were severed, lights flickered, and the station's AI reported a catastrophic failure across multiple systems. In the command center, Captain Voss issued rapid-fire orders. "Get me Reyes, full system diagnostics. I want power rerouted to shields now." But before her orders could be carried out, the anomaly shifted. Its shimmering patterns, once random and chaotic, began to take on a distinct structure. Symbols formed, twisting and shifting in ways that seemed almost deliberate. "It's trying to communicate." Kal-El's voice rang through the comms. Voss turned sharply. "Kal-El, how are you?" "I intercepted your distress signal," Kal-El replied. "I am aboard a Halak vessel just outside the anomaly's reach. It seems I returned at an opportune moment." Reyes, who had rushed into the command center, frowned at the holographic display. "If this thing is trying to talk, it's not using any language we know." Kal-El's voice was calm but firm. "We must attempt to understand. This entity is not an enemy, it is an intelligence, one far beyond our comprehension. It is reaching out to us." Voss hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Reyes, get your team on it. Kal-El, if you've got insights, now's the time to share." The message. Reyes and Kal-El worked tirelessly to decode the anomaly's patterns. With each passing hour, the station's power reserves dwindled, and the anomaly's presence began to exert a strange gravitational pull on the station. "It's pulling us in," Voss warned. "We're running out of time." Kal-El's tendrils twitched with frustration as they studied the shifting patterns. "It is speaking in layers," they murmured. "Each symbol represents not just a word, but a concept, a thought." Reyes leaned over, his hands flying across the console. "Then we need a way to match its complexity. What if we use quantum computation to translate it in real time?" Kal-El's eyes widened. "That might work, but it would require synchronization with the anomaly itself." Reyes smirked. "Good thing we've got wizards on board." As the humans and Holocs collaborated, the first fragments of meaning emerged. The anomaly wasn't just an entity, it was a collective consciousness, an ancient intelligence formed from the memories of countless civilizations. It had come to observe, to understand the new species that had ventured into its domain. But there was a warning buried within its message. The anomaly had seen the rise and fall of countless empires. It had witnessed the destruction wrought by those who wielded technology without wisdom. Humanity, with its chaotic ingenuity, and the Holocs, with their rigid precision, stood at a crossroads. "Your path," the anomaly's message declared, "will shape the fate of the stars." The revelation. Kal-El and Reyes worked late into the night, decoding the anomaly's final message. It wasn't just observing, it was testing. Humanity and the Holocs had proven themselves capable of survival, but the anomaly sought something more: collaboration. It wanted to see if these two species, so different in philosophy and approach, could unite to forge a future that balanced innovation with responsibility. We have to respond, Karel said, their voice resolute. Together. Reyes nodded. Let's show this thing what we're made of. The humans in Halex crafted a response using the anomaly's own language, a complex tapestry of light and energy that conveyed their willingness to learn, to grow, and to work together. The departure. As the station's systems began to falter under the anomaly's pull, the entity abruptly ceased its advance. The shimmering patterns dissolved into a radiant burst of light, and the anomaly began to recede. It's leaving, Voss said, her voice filled with relief and awe. Reyes watched the holographic display as the anomaly faded into the distance. Do you think it'll come back? Karel's tendrils coiled thoughtfully. Perhaps, but if it does, it will not be as a test, it will be as a guide. The legacy. In the weeks that followed, Esterian Station became a symbol of hope and collaboration. The humans in Halex formalized an alliance, pledging to share their knowledge and work together to prepare for whatever lay ahead. Reyes and Karel, once skeptical of each other's methods, became co-leaders of an interspecies initiative to advance scientific understanding. The story of the anomaly spread across the galaxy, inspiring other species to consider the value of unity. For the first time, there was a sense that the disparate civilizations of the stars might come together to face the challenges of an ever-expanding universe. Epilogue. In the quiet of the engineering bay, Reyes stood alone, gazing out at the stars. Karel approached, their movements as fluid as ever. You miss it, don't you? Karel asked. Reyes smiled faintly. The magic? Yeah, but I think we've got plenty of it ahead. Karel extended a tendril in their customary gesture of respect. Then let us continue to create it, together. Reyes clasped the tendril with a grin. Let's make some wizardry. And as the stars glimmered beyond the station's windows, humanity and the Halex embarked on a journey that would shape the galaxy for generations to come. Together, they had proven that the greatest magic of all was the ability to overcome differences and to dream of a brighter future.